So last week I had to take down my 54-gallon reef tank to prep for the electricians to come into the house to see what's going on with my breakers continuously kind of tripping throughout the day. Luckily they did find an issue, and the issue was a faulty breaker. So I went through and explained what was going on, and they went outside, checked the breaker, and the actual breaker was actually a lot hotter than normal, and they think that it was either a faulty breaker where it was tripping, and they ended up replacing the breakers for me, and so far so good. Like, I haven't had the breakers or the circuit in the living room tripped, so I'm crossing my fingers that that is actually the fix. Now, all that water that was in the tank initially, I had to store it outside in the garage. So what I ended up doing this week was pumping all that water into a container and then slowly moving that water back into the tank. I ended up pumping it into a trash bin, which held a lot more water than just your normal, 5-gallon buckets, because that would have taken like a bunch of trips, and that would have sucked. But I ended up moving all the water back in, placed the rock pedestal in the tank again. I kind of swapped the two pedestal from, I guess, each side. I originally had one on the other side, and I had the other one on the other side. I figured it was a lot better looking if I did it this way. On top of that, I did add in a few new things to the tank. One was an MP10 that I had laying around. Ideally, I would have wanted a MP40, but I didn't have an MP40, and I just wanted to reuse what I had so I can just save some money. But currently, the schedule for this MP10 is anywhere from 20 all the way to 100 when the lights are on and whatnot. Throughout the night, it's actually set down to 20%. Also, on the sump, I hooked up the auto top-off unit. This will help automatically refill the water by topping it off as water evaporates in the tank. Plan is not to run a refugium in the actual sump for this tank, just because the sump compartment is actually smaller than some of my other sump, and it actually can only house certain things. So I'm planning to run actually a skimmer in this tank, and I'm going to be swapping it with a GFO in between. So for example, like if this tank was running the skimmer, other setup will run the GFO, and when the GFO kind of removes all the phosphates from that setup, I will kind of swap it and run the skimmer on the other tank and then run GFO in here. It's just to help reduce the phosphate. Both, does pretty much what it's supposed to do, is to remove organics and just kind of help remove phosphate. I know that a refugium will do that, but it actually can't remove it as fast as some of these other ones. In combination, it'll probably help, but I just didn't have space to run both down the sump. So I'm actually planning to run the macroalgae up on the top. So I ended up picking up a CPR in-tank unit, basically like a little container that can either, house injured fish, house like, new corals or whatever. But I'm going to actually plan to use this container to grow macroalgae. Since I can't run it in the refugium, I'm just going to go ahead and run it in the tank, just because the lights are going to be up here as well. I don't have to run two lights, and it's going to be very close to the units up top here. So I figure having a combination of macroalgae plus the skimmer slash GFO will help definitely reduce the phosphate down to almost nothing. So let's quickly talk about the livestock for this tank and the plan for the tank. I actually plan on doing a bubble tip anemone tank, or just a setup, with a pair of clownfish, and along with those pair of clownfish will be a few yellow tangs, and then probably a few snails and maybe a cleaner shrimp or so to kind of help maintain, the fish health and critters that may be in the tank. Alright guys, and that is the update for the week. I hope you guys enjoyed this week's update. If you guys aren't subscribed yet, make sure you guys are subscribed. And like always, until next time guys, peace.